on to our next interview that we've got for you guys. So thank you all so much for tuning in today. We hope you guys are well and keeping safe, and we're sending you, as always, lots of love from the Chantry team. So today, we're very excited, very excited. We have a wonderful, wonderful gentleman to interview for you all. This is the amazing Cal McCrystal, and let us just tell you a little bit about him. So, born in Belfast, Cal worked as an actor in theatre, TV, film and radio before turning his hand to directing, and now specialises in directing comedy. Yay! We love a bit of comedy, don't we, in our company? Yes. So he was physical comedy director for the National Theatre's award-winning West End and Broadway hit One Man, Two Guvnors, and the RSC's Don Quixote, which transferred to the West End. Cal has also directed shows for the internationally acclaimed comedy and physical theatre company Spymonkey, and created the comedy routines for Cirque du Soleil's Varekai and Zumanity. Cal has now started directing operas for companies such as English National Opera, Garsington Opera, and Loughborough Opera. He works recurrently as a comedy consultant for the film industry and has worked on films such as The Dictator, The World's End, Man Up, The Nice Guys, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Paddington 1 and 2, Dora the Explorer, and the Cats movie. Wow! That's quite impressive. So, I mean, gosh, what an amazing chap to talk to. So here he is. Let's welcome him. Hi, Cal.
Hi, guys.
How are you? How are you coping amongst all this craziness that's going on?
Well, it's a waiting game, isn't it? I mean, I feel very lucky that I have a nice home and I have a garden. I mean, the garden, I've never been so appreciative of having that. But yeah, I mean, I just need to know when I can go back to work, because obviously it's frustrating to go from a very busy professional life to not doing anything. And unfortunately, our industry is going to be one of the last ones to return intact.
Yeah. Yes, it is. But as you said, though, we're all kind of making the best of it. I do honestly think that people's gardens have never received as much use as they have over the past 9 weeks or so.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, we're very lucky that we've got a garden. So, yeah. Well, we have some questions for you today, Cal. We're gonna fire ahead.
Let's go straight into it.
Yeah.
So let's start right back at the beginning, Cal. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you first got into the theatre world?
I think I think I was a natural show-off as a child, and wasn't very academic, and so was drawn toward the drama department, and received a fair amount of praise at school for stuff I did in school plays and things, and it just seemed like a natural way to go to drama school afterwards. And it's interesting because I think I found a magazine, a school magazine. I went to school in America, found a school magazine from when I was 8, I think. We all interviewed each other in my class. And the question we all asked each other, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd said, aged 8, a comedian. And I found that about 10 years ago in my parents' loft. And I was really delighted that the roots of it had been there so early on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. What did you want to be when you were 8?
Oh, everything. Footballer, actor. I went through everything that we possibly want to be.
Lego maker.
Not what I am now, yeah.
No, that's amazing. So how did the comedy career actually start?
I got cast in a lot of comedy roles at drama school. I went to the Royal Scottish Academy, which is now known as the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. Yes. They wanted a slightly more pretentious name, and they got one.
Yeah, funnily enough, I was actually part of the, when they made the swap over to that name, I was involved in a production that was running alongside that as part of that.
Oh,
so
right.
I remember that well.
Yes,
I
understand why they've changed the name, because they're not just music and drama. They do dance now, as of course you know, and they do lots of different things. So I don't think I was ever very good at the straight tragic roles. I remember having the last line in a production of Titus Andronicus that we were doing at the Theatre Royal. It was one of our final productions in Glasgow. And I used to say this line, and there was this big bloodbath had been created, everyone stabbing each other at the end of that very gory play. And I had the last line, and the audience fell about laughing as the curtain came down. And every night I tried saying it differently, and the cast was so angry with me. They said, "We worked so hard all night and you ruined it." But I couldn't kind of pull off being very serious. And so I got into, I did lots of comedy roles in theatre and TV, did a lot of children's television presenting. And then I started studying with Philippe Gaulier when I was about 28, I think. So I'd been in the business about 6 years or something. And that was very life-changing. I loved that. He's a French performance teacher and specializing in clowning and Buffon and those commedia sort of arts. And I loved that. And that and he invited me to be in a show with him that he was directing. And through being in that show, I then started being asked to direct things. So by other wannabe clowns, physical performers who saw me in the show, couldn't afford Philippe, but they thought, well, maybe Cal will help us. And that's how I got started directing.
Oh, do you miss performing at all? Do you ever wish you were back up there doing it?
I'm going to be honest and say yes, I do. I never feel that I want to be in any of my own shows because I really have enough to do as a director. I've got enough on my mind. I don't know how people who do both at once, like Kenneth Branagh, I don't know how they manage to do both. In a film, I suppose it's slightly different, but I want to give my full attention to the performers in the show and not be selfishly thinking about myself. But I think I was probably quite good, and I do sometimes feel, oh, what a waste, I should still be doing that. And if ever I get offered a little cameo in a film I'm working on, like I had a cameo role in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I also had a cameo role in Paddington 2, and that's just because often I kind of leap up and demonstrate stuff, and if we're devising a piece of comedy, the sequence, so the director will say, "Oh, you've got to be in the movie, you've got to be in the movie," and I always say, "Oh, all right, yeah, okay, I don't mind," and I really enjoy that. In fact, I remember, and this is a terrible thing to admit, I remember when I was my role of Principal Conway that I played in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield came up to me on the day that I was to film my scene, and I was the headmaster, and I was talking to a lot of students at this graduation ceremony thing we were filming. And Andrew said to me, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "No, I'm not nervous at all, because acting is so easy compared to what I do. So for me, this is a day off." Now, of course, that's not true. Good acting is not easy, it's difficult. But I did feel like it was getting on a much loved old bicycle, and that I didn't have to think about, oh, what am I going to do? I just had to remember my lines and not bump into furniture. And most of my role got cut, I have to say, but that's gone. So,
well, I've got to be honest, it takes a heck of a lot of talent to make the audience fall about laughing at the end of Titus Andronicus. When you said that, I was like, wow, that is a skill. That's because that's a.
Well, the funny thing is, I've discovered since. I wish I'd known this at the time, but quite often productions of Titus Andronicus are met with laughter at the end, because it's a terribly gory blood fest.
It is, isn't
and
it?
I think, and it's so ridiculous. And the last scene says, "You see that pie you ate? Both your children were baked in," and all this. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And I think often to release tension, the audience do laugh. So it wasn't necessarily all my fault. But it did at the time. It just taught me I wasn't going to be playing any of these kind of Shakespearean tragedies.
Oh.
Well, speaking of plays, how did the opportunity come about to work on One Man, Two Guvnors? And, what was your time like working on that absolutely incredible show?
Oh, right. I have to be careful what I say now, or maybe I shouldn't. No, Nick Heitner had, I think he'd seen Spymonkey shows. He'd certainly seen work I'd done and was aware of the work I was doing in comedy. and he was doing this adaptation of a commedia dell'arte play, and knew that he didn't have the experience or the knowledge to create the physical sequences, the sequences that are part of what goes along with, commedia.
Mm.
So we thought he'd get a specialist in to help with the physical stuff. But of course, actually, you can't really, and this is the problem, it's 2 or 3 times I've been comedy director on a production where they have another director, and you can't separate the comedy in a comedy from everything else.
Mm.
So it actually turned out to be, I had a very, very, very big footprint on the whole thing, dramaturging it, adding lines, adding jokes, cutting the script, personally directing the performers. So it was, and creating a comic vocabulary for the entire play. It wasn't, I didn't find it easy. I mean, James Corden was a little bit untrusting at the beginning, I thought, because I feel he might have felt, who's this guy I've never heard of, who's been invited in to tell me how to be funny? So there's a bit of that going on. But I think once he saw what I was doing, and once he saw what this play could become with all my physical comedy stuff I was doing in it, he then soon came on side. I think Nick, to his credit, he's not always an easy person, but he let me do what I knew I needed to do with it. And not all directors are happy for that to happen, because they're worried that the critics will say, oh, Nick didn't do any, it was all Cal or something. But no, he's a big enough person. He let me do what I needed to do, even though I think he didn't quite understand it during the rehearsal process so much. I think a lot of people on that show didn't realize the potential of it until the audience came in. But I knew what was going to happen with that show, because I've been going to the National for years, and I knew how an audience would react with really good comedy, because they laugh at anything there. Anything that there's that National Theatre, that opera laugh, they call it, where some character says something that is vaguely amusing and the audience go, oh, oh, it's not a real laugh. It's an acknowledgement that something is supposed to be funny. And I thought, if you can really hit them with the real laughs, they will go crazy. Yeah. And they did. They went crazy for, 5 years. So I'm very proud of that show. We went to the West End, we went to Broadway. It was all in all, it was a very happy experience, actually. And James, I mean, you mentioned before that I'd worked on the Cats movie. I should probably take that off my CV because it's such a famous flop. But James was asked to do the Cats movie, and said, if you want me to be funny in this, you've got to get Cal along. So I went along to help James with his role, and I also worked with Rebel Wilson. Those are the only two, and actually I thought both of them came across reasonably well in it. But and in fact I enjoyed working on that film, because I thought Tom Hooper was very pleasant, and I'd heard otherwise, but actually I really liked him. So that's how Guvnors came about. They just saw my work and asked me to do it.
Fantastic.
Wow. So you just mentioned about your work on the Cats movie, and we mentioned at the beginning the other movies that you worked on. How do you find directing comedy for film is different to directing comedy for theatre? Because obviously you don't have a live audience to respond to. So what's the process that you would work on?
I think the main difference is, I mean, I work very individually. I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I work in such minutiae with the performers I'm working with. And so in that sense, it doesn't change. I look at someone, I think I can see what their clown is or why they're funny. Might be much funnier than they think they are. And I think I'm very good at helping people to bring out their funniest side. I also have a lot of ideas all the time when I'm working about gags and things they could do and things they would look funny doing, people they would be funny working alongside. So that doesn't change. But I do think that for me with film, it's quite a guessing game, because when I'm working in theatre, I kind of know what I'm doing. I have a very strong instinct when I'm working with things that are going to be live. I've got the audience on my shoulder and in my head. I can hear every time they're going to laugh and every time they're not going to laugh. I just have that. It's the only thing I'm interested in. I'm not interested in having a message to put out or making a political point. Don't care about any of that. I'm only interested in when the audience is going to laugh and how much they're going to laugh. And because I've got that thing in my head the whole time, it means that I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm working on a play or a piece of theatre. But with a film, you never know how they're going to edit it. And from rehearsal and actually filming it, there's quite a big separation from that process and the audience actually watching it. So I apply my live instinct to that process as much as I can, and it seems to work. But I mean, with the Paddington movies, I was invited into the edit sometimes just to make sure that they were getting those jokes absolutely right, exactly when to cut off the joke, how long to stay on the close-up of the face, all the rest of it. I mean, I did a lot of the motion capture for Paddington myself. The bathroom scene in Paddington 1, I did almost that whole thing on my first day. And I was black and blue afterwards, but it turned out very well, so it was worth it.
Wow.
Yeah, I can imagine there is like a big jump between the actual process of filming and then what we finally see. That's really something to sort of take into account. Something else which is something that we have to take into account as choreographers. When we're creating dance or movement for actors or for singers or for dancers, there's always a very different way of working if we're choreographing for dancers compared to if we're choreographing for somebody whose first performance language isn't dance. So for maybe an opera singer or an actor. As a comedy director, how does that work for you if you were working with an actor who maybe had not had any comedy experience or didn't think they were funny or any of that sort of thing? How do you sort of approach that?
I think it's, like I said before, it's just not having too fixed an idea of what you want. You can have a fixed idea of what you want to achieve, but certainly I find, I mean, working in opera, for instance, a lot of the singers won't have had any experience doing comedy. And a lot of them, I mean, gone are the days when opera singers just came and stood there and sang. They don't, they do have physical training.
Yes.
And they do have to do a certain amount of acting training as well. But certainly, I mean, I found that when I was working, when I was directing Iolanthe at English National Opera, it's an enormous theatre. It's the biggest one in London. And the stage, because nobody's mic'd there at English National Opera, so you actually have to keep your head out front the whole time. If you move your head this way, your voice will drop out and people at the back won't hear. So there were absolute physical restrictions on that job. There was also a certain amount of inexperience. But I think if you get people to trust you and like you, they will try things out. And if you create an atmosphere in rehearsals that is really enjoyable, people tend not to want to be on the outside of that. Yeah. So, I mean, there was one singer in that production who I didn't get on with because this person kind of knew the way they wanted to play the part, and it didn't fit with how I wanted the production to be, and that was their loss. But most people I found were absolutely delighted to be stretched and pulled into their silly side. And what I did was actually, in the months leading up to the start of rehearsals, I took individually every single principal singer out for a drink. I took them to the Ivy Club. We sat down, we had a glass of wine or a cup of tea, and I just broke the ice that way. And I said to them, you know, a lot of the laughs in this show are going to be at your expense. Now, you don't mind that, do you? And they'll go, oh, no, I love laughing at myself. So they had a bit of time to prepare. And with the chorus, you know, there are 40 people in the chorus, very, very talented permanent chorus they have at I did some workshops before, which I think they were a bit suspicious about, but I was able to create such a fun atmosphere in the workshops that they then, all of them couldn't wait for rehearsals to begin. And most of them were volunteering to do extra bits and pieces, and I was taking bits of dialogue and handing it out to chorus members. And so I just, I think, as I said, I think you just have to try and get people to trust you so that they won't fight with your ideas. And, you know, some people as well have a very clear idea of what makes them funny, and that's what they want to do. And actually that might not be as funny as it could be, or it might not be my kind of funny. And one has to be very tactful pulling someone off that mindset. You can't just say that's not funny. You have to offer them something else and hope that they think, oh, I actually like that better than my idea. So unlike my clown teachers who were very, that's not funny, sit down, I try to do the whole thing much more gently, and I still get the same results. I mean, that's not criticizing the teachers, because if I was running a school and teaching every day, I'd probably be ghastly, you know, but because I'm doing it for short periods of time in rehearsals, I can afford to be a lot more patient. Does that somewhat answer that question?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got one more question before our quick fire round.
Sure.
I think this is going to be a good one for any aspiring comedy directors out there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
If you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring comedy director, what would it be?
To a director, I would say that you have to look at what the actual performer has in their bag. Look at what they're good at, and also look at what they're bad at. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they'll be much funnier doing things that they're not good at. Yeah. And you can mix the two. I mean, and I also think they should say to the performers that they must trust the audience. They must trust the audience. If you poke your head out onto the stage and the audience think, he trusts us, they'll like you. And if they like you in a comedy, you don't have to work as hard. Mm.
Fantastic. Yeah. Right, well, you heard it here, people. Yeah. So if you want to get into this.
We get it a lot as choreographers, and then people do ask us, you know, how does your experience as dancers inform you as a choreographer? And would you highly recommend to anyone who wants to go into directing that actually having that performance experience will enhance their directing skills?
Yes, I mean, this is probably controversial, but I don't see how anybody can possibly direct well unless they've been a performer. You know, and I think a lot of directors, and I think I'm wrong, because there are, I think a lot of good directors who went to university and studied the classics and came out and they're great interpreters of text. I mean, Peter Hall, etc. But for me, I think whatever kind of director you are, you'll be a better director if you've tried it yourself, because you have to be able to get into as an actor, I worked with an awful lot of directors and a lot of directors who are considered to be very good, but I found they didn't have my head in their heads. And I think I'm able to do that with performers because I've been there as an actor and I've struggled to make things work. And I know what the shortcuts are, and I have a vocabulary to talk to actors. I mean, I'm a terrible director for writers because I'll come in and think, oh, I'm rewriting this, you know, and I've got in trouble before rewriting Alan Bennett, rewriting Joe Wharton. Made it much funnier, but I got in trouble. But no, but so the writers kind of tend to get a bit chewed up, but no, performers, I'm a great admirer of performers. I mean, I think the performers are the arts, you know, the performing arts. They are. It's not the directors. It's not the writers. It's the performers for me.
Yeah, no, I think it would be. I completely agree with you that, of course, I mean, obviously there are people who are great directors or choreographers or whatever who have not been performers, but it would be very interesting to see what they would be like if they had been performers. I'm
yes.
on the train of thought that it would probably add dimension, but anyway, who knows, because we can't run that experiment. So we now have our amazing world famous quickfire round. Yes, people.
Oh, I'm excited.
This is what everyone waits for. I know it.
This is it. I think everyone just scrolls to the interviews just to get to this bit. Right.
So it's against the clock. It's got to be your fastest, most instinctive answer without being horribly rude. Oh.
Okay.
Okay. We always say this. We say this to everybody we interview, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll be really quick. I'll do it straight away." And we'll ask the question. They'll be like, so yeah, we'll see, Cal. Right.
Okay.
Ready? I'm ready.
Here we go.
How long does it take you to get ready in the morning?
7 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's precise. Have you timed it?
Well, no, I think, yeah, I throw some clothes on. Shaving takes 1.5 minutes, 4 minutes in the shower. Yeah, it's about 7.
Wow,
awesome.
That was a quick calculation.
Okay.
Cool.
Have you ever knocked on a door and run away?
Oh, yeah, when I was a kid.
Perfect. Yeah, me too.
If you could live in any other era, which one would it be?
Oh, God, so many. Victorians. Late Victorian.
Oh. What was the deciding factor there for you?
I like the clothes.
I don't know.
Or the corsets.
Yeah.
So good bustle.
Okay, what is your biggest screw up in the kitchen?
Oh God, you know, I actually trained as a chef before I went to drama school.
Oh.
And I'm actually quite a good cook. I cannot make a Victoria sponge. It always sinks.
Oh.
Look at the Colosseum, and they're the most easy things, and I'm cursed. That's it for me.
Oh dear.
Oh.
No Victoria, and especially as you
the
said,
Victorian.
Victorian. Oh no.
Okay.
No, yeah, there's a nice connection.
Right, there we go. So, right, would you rather be fluent in all languages and never be able to travel, or be able to travel anywhere for a year, but not be able to learn a word of a different language?
What sort of question is that? Anyway, yeah.
Well, the second one, because it kind of describes my life.
So basically travel but not be able to speak any languages. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the craziest fashion trend that you've ever rocked?
Oh God. I used to dress very, very eccentrically. And I used to have people like shouting Doctor Who at me in the street because I used to wear this big Inverness coat. When I was 12, I used to go for a walk with a dog and I'd wear a big Dracula cloak. I used to have this really long scarf. It was 12 foot long. I loved wearing bowler hats and top hats. And I used to put these pictures of me when I was a young actor in Spotlight. You know, instead of just like a thing, I would be there with like a walking stick and a bowler hat and stuff. So I used to be a real dandy. And now I'm a little bit more subdued. But yeah, no, my fashion sense, my dress sense has always been a bit outlandish.
Awesome.
Cool.
Loving it.
That. Cool. What was the first record, tape, or CD that you ever owned?
Now, do most people remember this?
Sorry. We've had technological interruption there.
There we go.
Oh, hate technology. Sorry, Cal.
Do most people remember the answer to this question?
Well,
we never asked it.
This is the first time. We changed the questions up.
Well, okay. Well, I remember very clearly when I was living in the States, in New Jersey. I bought my first single. This is going to age me. It was Aquarius by the Fifth Dimension.
Ooh.
Which is one of the songs from the musical Hair, which had just opened on Broadway.
Oh, fantastic. Do you remember what would your first thing been, LP or tape?
Mine would have been a tape. I'm sure it was one of those tapes that you used to get sellotape to the front of the Smash Hit magazine.
Oh.
It was a compilation of quite bad B-sides.
Oh dear. No, I'm trying to remember what mine would have been. I mean, I had a wonderful LP as a kid, which was the Wombles Do Christmas. But I think that I didn't own that. That was my parents. I think my first tape was Now 8. Oh dear.
Oh right. Okay. Now, that age is you. Yes. They're now 111 now, aren't they?
Something like that.
Now 5,062,000. I don't know. I've lost it. Okay. Right. Where are we? Here we go. Ah, yes, right. If you had a boat, what would you call it?
Ulsterville.
Oh, wow.
I know it's a terrible name for a boat, but you wanted a quick answer.
Fair enough.
that was the name of my parents' my grandparents' beach house in Ireland, and it's a place which I've always loved, and as a place to escape to, and it's gone now, this house, but. If I had a place to escape to, a boat or whatever, I'd call it that.
Fantastic.
Wow. What really gets on your nerves?
What really gets on my nerves?
People asking questions.
Quick fire.
Yeah. I'm scrolling in my head. I'm scrolling through this long list. What gets on my nerves? I think what gives me the most kind of what infuriates me the most is not being asked to direct at the Old Vic or the Royal Shakespeare Company or something. You know, I kind of think, no, I should be there. I'm very lucky. I do shows in Las Vegas. I do operas. I do things all over the place. But the places that don't ask me are the ones that I kind of go, what's the matter with me? Why aren't you asking me? So that's something. My partner says, let it go. You've got a great career. But yeah, so that's that. I find that infuriating. But otherwise, I'm quite a positive, buoyant person. So I try to enjoy every day. But no, that has me pulling my hair out, as you can see.
Okay, and last question. All right. Oh, this is a complicated one. Right. Would you rather be able to see 10 minutes into your own future or 10 minutes into the future of anyone but yourself? That's very existential, isn't it?
Okay. But wait a minute, because that could happen. Does that mean that when would this time start? Would it start before I thought somebody was going to get into trouble, or would it be like, no, it has to be now, pick someone?
I think we could say it could be any time. You can press this magic button anytime.
Oh, well, look, selfishly, I'm just going to say myself.
Fair play. Cool. Well, gosh, that is so fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much, Cal. It's been really...
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And, I hope that you guys are able to spring into action as soon as possible. I studied ballet for quite a while, and it's the one that got away. I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but I didn't start till I was 17, and it was just too late. So, but I do love ballet. I absolutely love. I took lessons for years and years and really love it.
Oh, well, what are we doing this weekend? We're screening one of our ballets actually this weekend on YouTube, it is a comedy ballet. Well, we're trying to be comedic anyway.
Right.
So feel free to have a little look at that one.
I will. What's it called?
It's called Alice Wonderland Through the Looking Glass. Paul is actually modelling a T-shirt. This is really embarrassing.
This is not a selfless plug.
I've just basically embarrassed him because guess whose face is on the front of the T-shirt? Yes.
Oh, I see. Oh, great.
Look at that.
Yeah. I
Amazing.
every night under my pillow.
Amazing. It looks like a Noel Fielding character.
I was going Marty Feldman.
Marty Feldman.
With the eyes.
Yeah.
So,
good.
No,
I'll definitely tune into that. That sounds fun.
Oh, fantastic. No, but thank you so much, Cal. So I'm sorry we have to stop the interview there, but that's all we have time for. So thank you to our viewers for listening, and we hope that you guys have really enjoyed this interview. And can we just say another huge thank you to you, Cal, and it's time for us now to say goodbye to everyone. But bye everyone, and bye Cal.
Bye.
Bye Cal.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.